Hello. Today I'll be featuring a game I did play a while ago, but I figured since I just featured the Cleveland, which showed this map from the other flank, I'll show off the Aoba from the south spawn. Now, the Aoba isn't really a ship I recommend for ranked. It's one of the ships I already said in my preemptive or preview. I said this isn't a recommended ship, and I have to stand by that. I played the Aoba I think about 10-11 games on the Asian server, and that was mostly because I'm leveling a new account on the Asian server, so I was leveling the IJN cruisers, and I figured I might as well level my Aoba line in ranked, and it did pretty much confirm all my worries and concerns about the Aoba in ranked, and that's mainly it doesn't have the DPS of ships like the Cleveland or the Grass or Budionni, and it's way too squishy. It's too much of a citadel. That's the issue, really. It has too much citadel going for it, and the concealment isn't really enough to compensate for just how much citadel it has going. Also, unlike, for example, Budionni, who can sit at or the Grass or Galissonier, these ships that can sit at very long ranges, even the Nuremberg that can sit at very long ranges, the Aoba doesn't have these extreme ranges. It's got something like 14.6 or something like that. Like, the range is quite pitiful. And 14.6 doesn't sound that bad if you're, for example, a Cleveland, but the difference is the Cleveland can quite easily hide behind cover and use the guns, whereas the Aoba has much flatter arcs, which means, of course, that the same type of hiding behind islands gameplay isn't nearly as feasible. It doesn't work nearly as well. So you're kind of like right between those two, where you don't really have the advantages of either. It does, of course, have 203mm guns, which means higher chance of setting fires, shells won't shatter as much, you don't need IFHE, for example, because your shells already have so much pen, and your AP can be quite punishing. These are, of course, the strengths of the Aoba guns, but ultimately you only have 6 of them, and the reload is quite long, so especially with the introduction of IFHE, the DPM you have is not nearly as high as these 150mm guns that with IFHE become these massive damage monsters. Our Leander attempts to go for some extremely ballsy play by pushing super deep and then smoking up and trying to kill their DDs, but I don't see that kind of move ever paying off, and he dies very quickly. So we're already down one ship. That was just a straight up a foolish move. Leander, like in general, I should say that in the Cleveland commentary, cruisers leading the charge never gonna work out. Not in the current meta. It doesn't matter what cruiser you are, you're gonna get killed. And Leander is, of course, especially squishy, and that kind of plan is never gonna work out. Even, let's say it works out, he gets into the smoke, and he smokes up and he's still alive. How do you get out of that position? See, that's something that people don't. Let's pretend that the Lander makes it all the way to that position he just was in, and he manages to smoke up and all is good and so forth. What happens when his smoke fades? And this is the kind of thing that people don't really plan out. They plan the initial stages, but they don't plan how the hell are they going to get out of that position. And when the smoke fades, that Lander would absolutely die with no escape. Budionni giving me a bunch of broadsides, so naturally I switch to AP, and I'm able to punish him quite heavily. And this Budionni, once again, what did I say about pushing into the middle? Pushing into the middle of the B cap, it's not recommended. As soon as a battleship looks at him, he explodes. Of course, he gave broadside as well. So luckily, our suicidal cruiser was countered by their suicidal cruiser. So we're quite even in that sense. And we did manage to secure a cap. So the Leander, even though his play was terrible, I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it, our DDs did seize the opportunity that terrible play gave, in the sense that the Leander kind of bulldozed away any enemy DD presence, and they managed to cap B for our team in the meanwhile. Hatsaru spotted, obviously calling target and trying to focus him as much as possible. Sadly, I miss. And of course here the 10-second reload time is quite long for a cruiser, especially since you only have 6 shells. On the bright side, when you do hit, because it's 203mm HE, it does have a larger explosion area. Depending on what caliber guns you have, like what caliber HE you shoot, it has a larger area of effect, and the larger the area of effect, the more modules it impacts. That's why, for example, one battleship HE shell on a DD can break like all your torpedo tubes, all your turrets, your engine, your rudder, everything at the same time, because the AoE on it is so massive. And that's of course a small advantage, but still worth mentioning. So now that we have this advantage, we have what I would straight up consider quite a good advantage. We have the cap, the ships are even, but more important is we have the B cap. So all we really need to do is maintain this hold. Just hold this position defensively. And basically whenever the Hatsuhara comes in, our DD spots him and we just wreck him. That's the fundamental plan here. But I do, however, suspect that the Fuso detonated from a Hatsuhara Torp, and that is of course some fun and engaging gameplay right there. Anyway, I do, however, suspect that their Fubuki, if you look at the minimap, you can see he was last spotted going around the flank, and the Fubuki hasn't been spotted in a long time. You need to keep an eye out on these things. If the DD hasn't been spotted in a long time and you last saw him going for a flank, then obviously you should be assuming that he is attempting to pull some sort of flanking maneuver. And that's exactly what I warned my team about, that there is a flanking Fubuki no doubt coming in at Cleveland in the open. And what have we learned today that happens to cruisers that sail around in the open? They die. That's exactly what happens to cruisers that sail around in the open. And I feel like this is something that needs to be reiterated multiple times, because I keep seeing it. Cruisers sailing around in the open. There's all this natural cover to use, and even the Aoba that has too flat of arcs to properly use the cover, even I'm attempting to use the cover as much as possible. And here of course you see some of the bright sides of this 203mm shells is that even without IFHE, they do a lot of damage, minimal amount of shatters, and of course a very high fire chance per shell. Of course the actual fire chance in reality isn't as high really, considering the long reload and only 6 guns. Something like Cleveland has 12 guns and the faster reload, so obviously ultimately they still become a better fire starter than the Aoba, or well, in general they just have significantly higher DPM thanks to IFHE. In the past, of course, there's been a lot of power creep. Let's say it like that. There's been a ton of power creep. And as I warned this team about the Fubuki has actually managed to sneak past our Fubuki, gone all the way through our base, and is now torpedoing our battleships. And this is actually a pretty big issue right now, because our battleships are kind of the only thing stopping the enemy team from straight up bullying their way into B. We have DD, sure, but if they have anyone with Hydro, for example, they have a Graf Spee. If the Graf Spee is running German Hydro, then if there's no battleships around, the Graf Spee can just straight up charge into the cap, and any torps won't do anything because he'll spot them a mile away. So we're down to 4 versus 4. We have the DD advantage, which is considered quite good, but the issue here is our only battleship we have left is the Fuso. And if the Graf Spee does decide to bully his way in with Hydro, and the rest of his team actually follows him, we're going to have a hard time stopping him unless we have the Fuso around. So obviously I need to make sure that this Fuso stays alive no matter what. He's our linchpin in holding back B. Because torpedoes, while they are very strong of course, they are so hard countered by Hydro, and we need another tool. Sure, I can do damage to the Graf Spee, but ultimately, as I said, if he doesn't give me full broadside so I can use AP and get citadels, it's going to take me a while to kill him, and he'll of course return fire without any issues, and the Aoba isn't particularly tanky. So the Fuso is moving, and he does manage to dodge the next torp volley, and I need to read. What I'm doing here is I'm kind of screening. Well, first of all, I'm screening for the torpedoes, but most of all, I'm kind of acting like I'm creating space for my Fuso. I want this DD to focus on me and not the Fuso. First, I head straight south. The idea here is I go south enough that not only do I create distance between me and the enemy ships, but also I prevent the Fubuki from slipping past me and getting to the east flank. So the idea here is I get close enough to the border so that I can determine that he must be on my right, and when I have him on my right, then I can start shoving him away from this position, because we need our Fusos to stay safe. Now, the Fubuki smartly smokes up our Fuso. I guess he understands he's pretty much our last proper firepower we have holding that cap. So that Fubuki smoke was very smart, since now the Fuso is pretty much unstoppable as long as I keep the torps away. A smoked up Fuso or any battleship is a massive threat, and unless you have torps to dislodge him, he should pretty much be, they should be completely unable to deal with him. The Grafspe is pushing in, and based on how wrecked the Tatsuhara got, I'm gonna assume that he might be running Hydro, and let's see if he manages to dodge the torps as well. He does in fact manage to kill, and you can see the way he's dodging these torps. I'm pretty sure he is in fact running Hydro, as I was worried about. So this guy's trying to bully his way into the cap. But we have the Fuso still alive, and because I'm bullying and forcing away this Fubuki, you note I'm constantly changing course, and I just pushing towards where the Fubuki is, or where I think he is. And of course I might as well shoot the Grafspe while I'm at it. I'm spotted anyway by the DD, so I might as well keep harassing him. And the Fuso of course deletes him, and they really don't have any tools to deal with this Fuso because he's smoked up so very well. And now I get exact confirmation of where this DD is. I think I should have accelerated a bit more. I overestimated the turning circle here, so I'm gonna eat the torpedo, and that's half my HP pool gone. But ultimately, even if I die here chasing this Fubuki, it's not really that big of a deal, because the enemy team is running out of time and they had to like push into B, and my Fuso, you can see he's just eating them alive. He's sitting in that smoke and he's just farming their attempts to push into that cap, and I'm just keeping the only counter they had, I'm keeping away. And this isn't a particularly rewarding role in terms of XP and such. I mean, I'm basically target practice for that guy. He's just spamming torps at me, and as you see, eventually he will land one torp. And the Fuso is pinging on his right, and I say nope, he's over here. I've corralled him over here, and finally I managed to catch the Fubuki. Or in this case, it's also possible the Fubuki ran out of patience, and he's gonna try to YOLO me because we have 830 points, and he really needs to do something because they're about to lose the game. Of course, as soon as I realize that he's turned into me, which means of course he wants to YOLO me, I turn away. Basically, if a DD sails away from you, give chase, so you keep him spotted. As soon as he turns towards you, well, that's a pretty much obvious sign that he's trying to charge, he's trying to YOLO you. And as soon as you see him do that, that's when you turn away to make it easier to dodge his torps. And since the Aoba has torps, I use them as well, and then I break his engine and do as much damage as I can. And with his broken engine, it's impossible for him to dodge my torpedoes. And as predicted, here comes his next volley. But I should not have too many issues of dodging this. I kind of forced him into a desperation move because he needed to do something, and I was just bullying and pushing him away from the capture points. Not the most, as I said, rewarding role. The fact that I even got the kill was surprising, but ultimately I didn't expect it to be a rewarding role. I just wanted my Fuso to stay alive, because a smoked up battleship wins you games. And keeping this DD away won us this game. Our Fuso managed to farm quite a few kills and a ton of damage, and Fubuki of course constantly torping there. Pushing through a DD and a battleship at the same time is going to be extremely rough. So my job of keeping the DD away might not show up on the scoreboard, but it does show up in the fact that the score is ticking towards 1000, and it will most likely secure us a win in this game. Unless of course this New Mexico does something absolutely heroic, which I quite strongly doubt. So damage wise, wouldn't really call this much of an impressive game, but it does show you some of the roles you sometimes have to take, even though they might not be glamorous, they might not be rewarding, but they are the kind of things you need to do in order to secure yourself the victory. 74,000 damage. I did get high caliber because of the damage I dealt to various different targets. This is of course on the C server. This was when I was still leveling my account, so the actual ranks are quite low, but then again this was pretty much at the start of the season. In fact, looking at the play we saw here with DD's flanking and DD smoking up battleships and battleships just holding position and delaying and so forth, it kind of does prove that this season it doesn't really matter what rank you are. The level of play you see is entirely random. You might see better level of play at this rank than you see at ranks 1 to 5, I wish I was joking, because I've seen some truly atrocious level of play at ranks 1 to 5 on my main account. Anyway though, 2.1k base XP, and looking at the detailed report, 21k spotting, probably mostly from the plane, and not much potential damage, but of course the damage I actually dealt was quite important, in a sense it was to the Fubuki, and some heavy damage to the New Mexico, but honestly you shouldn't expect too heavy of a damage into Aoba, because the stars kind of have to align. Either you have to land some great torps, or you have to have a great opportunity of just sitting in the smoke and getting to just blast some poor battleship, and that's unlikely to happen. Anyway, I can show you my recommended build for this ship, even though this isn't a ship I recommend for ranked. Right, as mentioned, I have already unlocked the Myoko, so we have to go back a bit and look at the Aoba. Now the first thing you want to unlock on the Aoba is absolutely the range mod, because the default range is absolutely terrible at 13.6, so get to upgrade. 14.9, not 14.6 was actually the Aoba range, so I did slightly misspeak in my commentary. Once you have that, of course, get the hull upgrade as soon after. Other than that, it's very similar to the Myoko. Consumable wise, you want the premium heal, and of course you want the premium catapult fighter, because it gives you so much spotting, especially in ranked. Consumable wise, main armaments mod 1, AA range, rudder, steering gears mod, that is, because all IJN cruisers tend to lose their rudder extremely often, and this is highly recommended. In fact, in competitive gameplay, people run last stand on the Atago simply because the rudder is such a liability. So trust me, this is going to be the most valuable thing you can select here. And finally, of course, rudder shift. Can you actually select this on a tier 6? Oh yeah, you can select the same things. Okay, so that's pretty much exactly straightforward. Captain perks wise, priority target is your absolute number 1, followed by turret traverse, because the Aoba turret traverse, just like the Myoko turret traverse, is quite garbage. Followed up with demolition expert and concealment expert. That's the basic build. Then when you start getting points, you get adrenaline rush, and of course the double spotter planes, which gives you so much more information, especially in ranked. Highly recommended. Once you have this base build, well, then you can start working stuff like vigilance is extremely valuable, and ideally, of course, if you intend to level this captain higher, aka moving it on to Mugamis and such forth, you will want superintendent for additional heal on Ibuki and Zao. Or alternatively, you can just save the perks for IFHE if you intend to play the Mogami with the 155mm guns. But that's all in the future, and I doubt anyone is going to play a 19-point Aoba captain in ranked, because that just sounds extremely foolish. Flag wise, the two, you want speed flag. Detonation flag is of course highly useful for ranked, and the two fire flags extremely useful for ranked. Those are the base ones. Then you can add in stuff like AA if needed, but that's mostly flavor. These 4 base flags are the most important thing for the Aoba. Anyway, that was my Aoba ranked commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.